attending. I'll move that. Have I got a second to Councillor Cashmore? Any questions, comments should have been sent to the Chief Financial Officer. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We will move on, councillors, to the extraordinary item of the cladding of Albert Street. We will take part of this in the open meeting as promised. I decided that as long as we don't talk about costing, as long as we don't talk about legal issues, we can discuss the reasons for having it in open meeting. Remembering that the decisions were made to go into 135 Albert Street in the last term.
What time are we having lunch, Madam Chair?
Well,
It's 1 o'clock now.
well, I understand that, Councillor Wood, but I kept warning people because we have got a media contingent here who I'm sure would not appreciate if we closed and went away for half an hour. But so let's hope we can get through this reasonably quickly.
It's 1 o'clock, Madam Chair. I just raised the issue of. I mean, Councillor Stewart's raised this previously, that we sit here for hours. We've been here since 9:30 this morning.
Well, we had 9:30.
9:30 till 1 o'clock. I think
Madam
it's on
Chair.
the nose.
I wouldn't normally do this, but I would like to support your decision in terms of continuation. My mother's in hospice, and we're at a very, very, I would like to be there at some stage this afternoon, and I would appreciate it if we could continue.
Well,
I would
Madam
like
Chair,
to
how
do
long do you envisage this is going to take?
Councillor Wood is
No, I'm just asking the question.
Well,
I think I've got a legitimate reason to answer that, because we have said in the past that we would have regular breaks, and we haven't had a break this morning, and here we are at 1 o'clock, and we're going to be continuing on in a major item. Now, I just want to put that to the... councillors have said we were going to have regular breaks.
Councillor Wood, I am in the hands of the committee. However, maybe we could do the open part of the meeting now, and we could break at 1:30 and have lunch.
Okay, 1:30.
Many of us have lunch at 1:30, if we have lunch at all.
You'll be done by then.
When we have time. And I would remind councillors that we had a workship at
just
9:30,
make a point, Madam
and
Chair.
we didn't start this meeting till 10:30.
Wonder we're in
Kevin,
trouble with other
over to
things.
you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, look, as outlined, what we'll do here is a presentation which will, a bit of a recap, just to remind us what the situation is. We can talk about the options that have been assessed. But yeah, the two areas the Chair has mentioned, the budget being sought, which gives a strong indication of the price, which we're about to go through the tenders and procurement process for, and the issue around anything there's legally privileged, which is the warranties part. If we can leave any on those two items to the confidential section, that would be appreciated. But quite happy to take questions on other parts as we work through this presentation, or perhaps at the end.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Can I just ask something? Is this now public?
No, if you remember, we've at the beginning of the meeting, we had an extraordinary item that said that we would discuss what we can, other than legal.
So can a redacted version of this be made available? Because I'm aware that one media outlet has it and the rest don't, and that's kind of unfair.
Doesn't make it right.
Around here, it's amazing who gets what.
So there's obviously bits in this report that can be made public.
There will be, if we let Kevin get on with it, we'll see what we can talk about in public. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we find that the presentation will cover most of the pieces that can be public, so hopefully we can circulate that. And hopefully we've got a copy of that now. So if I can just start with a recap. Let's switch this on. Yep. So starting with a brief history. As you'll be aware, 135 Albert Street was purchased by Council in 2012. It was at a bit of an end of a long process which was determining the needs of the organisation subsequent to amalgamation. It was a significant opportunity to vacate leased premises. There were 9 around the CBD area alone, some owned, some leased, to bring some staff together in the CBD, recognising the regional hubs would still be maintained, but within the central part of the city, a need to bring those together, remove the lease payments we make it to other parts, but just as importantly is actually the notion of how we can actually use our workspace more productively. So the ability to find a building with the right footprints, the right scale, to enable us to implement workspace performance to the level we want to, which has resulted in significant savings, which we can mention as we go along here. Look, appropriate due diligence was undertaken at the time. Remembering we had an inhabited building, another the vendor owned, had other tenants besides themselves. We went through a process of assessing what we believe due diligence should cover, which did cover things such as legal, leasing arrangements, district plan or unitary plan in our case requirements, but it did also involve structural and engineering components. So work was done to look at the structure of the building as much as really what was practical at the time. So that did identify some issues during that period. It did identify some issues with the cladding and primarily the fixings behind the cladding. And some budget was put aside, as well as that issue becoming part of negotiations on price. What happened subsequent to that was, though, that as we then moved into the building during 2013, and we started to retrofit and refit the building for our purposes to make sure we could actually get the open plan basis, the changes to the method of working that we were looking for to achieve those savings. During that process, there was some more invasive investigations done. It was now our building, we were inhabiting it, and we started to identify there was degradations in certain parts of the building. A briefing was given to councillors very briefly. There was a circulated one to councillors, the mayor and staff in December 2015, and that identified the notion that there was going to be works required on the cladding. The actual issue at hand is around the cladding. And that's quite an important thing, and I'd like to emphasise a couple of points as we work through this piece here, based on some comments we've actually heard. So it is this cladding on the building, it's the outside piece, it's the clothing of the building, and how that is fixed to the structure of the building. What's very important to remember here is there is no evidence, there's no suggestion of any concerns around the structural stability, the actual bones of the building as such. So the bones of the building are sound, the structural components are sound, and so the phrase leaky buildings weather tightness, fundamentally what that's saying is water ingress into the building which is then affecting the structure. That's not the case here. This is all around the cladding and how the cladding is fixed to the structure, not the concrete, not the structure of the building itself. There's no concerns being found, no evidence of anything of concern there. We came to this committee on the 25th of February seeking approval to do some immediate works, and that was safety and risk works. That was the budget of 4.7 million that was approved. Now, that was a budget of really a reshuffling of budgets previously built into the long-term plan as a result of original findings, due diligence at the time of purchase. And what's also important to remember is that that money was put aside to actually to do the safety and enabling works. So it was how can we mitigate the risk immediately, reduce that risk as much as is practically possible, which did entail the hanging scaffolding and the working platform that we've talked about. But one thing just to correct, because we have heard some comments around this, is that the $4.7 million has not all been used to do that. Approximately half of that is to do the hanging scaffolding and the working platform. The rest of that budget brought forward from previous periods or from latter periods within the LTP is to start doing design work, some other work leading up to the substantive repairs, which are really the substance of today's discussion. As I mentioned before, look, the initial priority was all around the risk component. How do we ensure that we're managing the risk attached to the cladding issue that we've identified? And so that was the significant effort that was put in. Prior to Christmas, the fencing went up. Subsequent to that, we're now putting the hanging scaffolding and the working platform. The next piece we're moving on to now is the substantive works. What do we need to do to actually remedy the issue that has been identified with the cladding and how it is fixed to the building? So for information, that the work's underway right now. The hanging scaffoldings, you can see there's a bit of a purple lines around the top of the building, so levels 28, 29. That's literally a scaffolding built so that if any of that cladding should fall, it'll stop at that point. It'll be contained within that scaffolding. And obviously the biggest concern here is something falling from height. Now, again, good point to re-emphasise the notion we did discuss on the 25th of February. Nothing has fallen to date. And although the risk component of something falling and the impact obviously is quite concerning, a large granite panel falling from height, the likelihood of still being assessed is low. And as I say, no example of that happening to date. We're 25 years old as far as the building goes. The other piece is the red towards the bottom of the building there. So above that veranda, that podium piece on this building, on the 135 Albert Street I should say, there's a working platform to be built. So what that's doing, it's underway as we speak, is reinforced concrete with steel to actually stop. If anything does fall, it'll stop at that point. It'll hit that point and then stop. So it won't go through it. It won't go. Some of it may break when it hits that point, which means there's actually some shielding built to the side of the working platform. But again, it's a risk mitigation mechanism. At the top, it should stop it falling with the hanging scaffolding. If anything does happen to fall off the columns, it'll hit the working platform and stop at that point. The work's underway at the moment. It was also running in parallel to that, and we discussed that at the 25th of February meeting as well, is the detailed design, constructing the procurement plan and the supply recommendation as to now how we're going to deliver on this project. And so they'll be looking at going to tenders and procurement at the end of this month. That's the work underway. The substantive work that we're now looking at doing, and the options analysis has been undertaken, and it forms a significant part of the discussion today, is what are we now going to do with that cladding? So there were 4 main options identified, and the option that has been selected as being the most appropriate for a variety of reasons is what's covered in the slide here. That podium level is also used as a delineator as to what will actually occur. Above the podium, which is those red marked areas there, that's the granite cladding on the outside of the building now. The intention there is to take off that granite cladding, to look at the existing fixed framework as to how that's held on, replace that, ensure that it is fully up to spec, and then replace what was the heavy granite panels with a lightweight composite. And on that, in effect, is a picture, a textured piece, or a picture of granite. So it will look very similar to what was there. Below the podium, so that veranda area there, below there, which you may not be able to see well there, but you might see in your presentation as those the blue markings, is to take the granite off, replace the fixings, and then replace that granite back on. Under the podium there, that's the area. It's very visual. It's got the look and feel to ensure that we maintain what the original architectural design was of the building. So replacing the fixings, repairing the fixings throughout the entire building. Below the podium, putting granite back on. Above there, putting a lightweight replacement. To do that, it does require some decent technology, considering the health and safety environments we work in these days. We can't use a crane. You can't use abseiling down from above. So what's intended here, as has been used in other places, is what they call a mast climber. So if you remember that podium, that working platform referred to, not only is that to stop anything that does reach that point, it also becomes literally a working platform where you can now build things on. And what you can actually build is the masts that go up the side of the building, and these mast climbers attached to that travel up and down the building. Our version will actually be enclosed rather than the open version you have here. So in effect, it's an enclosed space, moves up the building, around the piece of granite you're working on, take the granite off, replace it, or do the fixings first, replace it with a new replacement. You can now move that mast climber to the next location. So it's an enclosed space. It means it's an extra health and safety consideration. You're minimising risk yet again. It also just helps with literally the process of doing the actual replacement. Intended at this stage to have 3 of these around the building, so depending on the weather conditions, wind directions and things, you can actually continue working almost all time, or all construction times anyway. The solution that has been looked at, there are several benefits, and the ones we're pointing out are it does still retain that look and feel of the building. It's a lightweight composite, but it has the look of granite because of the picture on that. Another consideration is the cladding will now be fully warranted. So what we put onto the building, regardless of where we're going to do, what we're looking at for this building going forward, we now have a fully warranted cladding on the outside. Fire resistant, so it'll bring it up fully to current New Zealand standards for fire resistance. Again, another significant issue we want to make sure we have covered under health and safety. It will better resist the water ingress. Now, there is water ingress. There's water getting into behind the panels we currently have for a variety of reasons, including the sealant that was used. This will actually enable us to actually ensure that is less likely to occur. And also, because of the lightweight material, because of the access to it, and because it will be properly fixed, it does mean that future maintenance will be much, much easier to do, and because of that, much more cost efficient. Oops, sorry, wrong button there. So in conclusion, the next steps. Look, what we're looking at to do today is for this committee to approve the project. So that's the selected option we have there, the budget for that. So we're looking at doing that under the confidential section of today's meeting. After that, the next step will be then to take the procurement plan and supply recommendation So if you do agree to the solution and the budget is available, we then go to tenders and procurement to say this is the way we'd like to now procure that to be done. We then look at regular reporting to start to the Audit and Risk Committee, ideally on a quarterly basis, but probably realistically we'll look at a date on the basis of more milestone driven.